For decades, the job description of a center forward was remarkably simple: stand in the penalty box, overpower the defender, and score goals. Players like Everton's Dixie Dean, who netted a record 60 goals in the 1928 season, set the blueprint for this physically dominant, highly localized position. But as defensive strategies evolved, that static approach stopped working. When managers introduced the WM formation, they dropped a central halfback directly into the defensive line to create a back three. Suddenly, the lone, stationary attacker was consistently outnumbered and immobilized by three defenders. To survive, attackers had to adapt. They began dropping deep into the midfield, pulling those center backs out of their rigid shapes, and creating open passing lanes for their teammates. This shifted the attacker's value from physical dominance to the manipulation of space. As this movement became more complex, modern scouting networks developed the 4Ps framework to measure it. They now evaluate forwards through 4 quantitative dimensions: possession under pressure, progression of the ball toward goal, penetration of the final defensive layer, and production, actual goals and assists. Because no single player can easily fulfill all of these complex physical and technical demands at once, the central forward position fractured into 12 highly specialized tactical archetypes. We can map these profiles by their primary zones of intervention. Closest to the opponent's goal, we find the box predators, attackers who thrive inside the congested penalty area by relying on highly specific physical or mental traits. The poacher is a highly isolated scorer who rarely participates in build-up play. Instead, they rely on elite spatial anticipation, drifting behind the defender's line of vision before executing explosive runs to finish crosses on the first touch. Compare that to the depth forward. This player also stays fixed inside the 18-yard box, but they use their heavy frame to absorb physical pressure from center backs. They shield the ball with their body, buying crucial seconds for the rest of their team to advance up the pitch. Moving slightly further out, we hit the Space Invaders. These are highly mobile forwards whose primary operational zone sits directly on the shoulder of the opponent's defensive line. The advanced forward uses aggressive speed and high work rate to run the channels. Players like Erling Haaland hover on the edge of the offside trap, waiting to latch on to through balls and forcefully stretch the opponent's defense vertically. The wide forward operates differently. They start out on the flanks to pull defenders wide, but instead of crossing the ball, they cut diagonally inside onto their stronger foot to attack the penalty box and finish centrally. Whether they are hovering around the 6-yard box or sprinting the wide channels, these advanced profiles generate value by violently pulling and stretching the opposing defensive structure until it breaks. But what happens when an attacker intentionally abandons the final third? This brings us to the deep droppers, players who leave the defensive line entirely to create numerical overloads in the midfield. The false nine starts high against the backline, but repeatedly drops deep to act as a creative playmaker. This gives the opponent's center backs an impossible choice: follow the forward into midfield and leave a gap in the defensive line, or stay put and allow a player like Lionel Messi total freedom to orchestrate the attack. The deep-lying forward executes a similar drop but relies on physical ball shielding rather than pure agility. They connect the midfield to the attack by holding off defenders with their back to the goal and playing quick link-up passes, and then immediately sprinting back into the box to finish the play. Then there is the second striker. Operating in the structural hole directly in front of the center box, they combine playmaking with an uncanny ability to make late, undetected entries into the penalty area for a shot. Some forwards bypass the midfield battle entirely as physical disruptors. The target man provides a massive aerial reference point. When a team is trapped under pressure, they send a long vertical clearance straight to the target man, who uses their height to win the header and retain possession. Conversely, the pressing forward's role is almost purely defensive. They lead the high press, diving into tackles and using their cover shadow, the blind spot directly behind them, to aggressively block the opponent's passing lanes during early build-up. These archetypes control the game without necessarily scoring the goals themselves. They generate value by dragging defenders into uncomfortable zones and shattering their structural integrity from the inside out. Finally, we reach the anomalies. The system hackers are the rarest attacking profiles because they defy standard spatial boundaries and physical expectations completely. Take the Raumdeuter, a German term translating to space investigator, pioneered by Thomas Müller. This role is highly unstructured, built entirely on elite spatial anticipation and decoy movement. A Raumdeuter doesn't rely on blinding speed or complex dribbling. They excel through cognitive mapping, floating between lines to find pockets of space that everyone else on the pitch has overlooked, often making perfectly timed runs to the far post. Then there is the rarest profile of all, the complete number 9. Players like peak Harry Kane or Robert Lewandowski merge every attacking dimension into a single game. They drop deep to link play, lead a high defensive press, dominate the air, and still record a high volume of touches inside the penalty box. They adapt their role to whichever weakness the opponent's defensive structure presents. These anomalies highlight a crucial reality of modern football. At the absolute highest level, offensive value is dictated by a player's cognitive flexibility and tactical adaptability, rather than their raw physical dominance. A manager's challenge is pairing these specific profiles to create a cohesive system where one player's movement creates the space for another's superpower to work. This is why we see the classic big man, small man combination. A manager uses a physical target man to contest long aerial clearances and knock the ball down into space, perfectly teeing up a fast, advanced forward who is already running behind the defense. In setups like the 3-2-4-1, the center forward strategically pins multiple center backs. By holding a fixed central position, one attacker forces 2 defenders back. This paralyzes the defensive center. With defenders occupied, massive half-space channels open, allowing attacking midfielders to run straight through unmarked. An elite striker can finish a match without a single shot on goal while still serving as the primary engine for the win. Their value is measured by the invisible, decisive space they construct for everyone else on the pitch. A manager's challenge is pairing these specific profiles to create a cohesive system where one player's movement creates the space for another's superpower to work. This is why we see the classic big man, small man combination. A manager uses a physical target man to contest long aerial clearances and knock the ball down into space, perfectly teeing up a fast, advanced forward who is already running behind the defense. In a 3-2-4-1 lone striker setup, the center forward pins multiple center backs. By holding a high central position, one attacker forces 2 defenders to stay and mark them. With the center paralyzed, massive half-space channels open, allowing midfielders to run through the defensive structure unmarked. An elite striker can finish a match without a single shot on goal, while still serving as the primary engine for the win. Their value is measured by the invisible, decisive space they construct for everyone else on the pitch.